Fill the tureen for Halloween, and let the cups be clinking, for on this night 'tis our delight, the witches' health keep drinking. Welcome, listeners. Good evening. I'm Jimmy G, and welcome to a very special broadcast of Megalomedia Melange in the heart of Inverness on the Mesa on Halloween. This is the inaugural gathering of the Penumbra Society. I would like to introduce Rebecca Nelson Lubin, Sandra D'Angelo, Jen DePina, and Diana Lerwick, who tonight will be sharing their personal paranormal experiences. We'd like to start off right away by introducing Rebecca and her story.
So in college, I lived in a very haunted house. It was in New Paltz, New York, and when we moved in, we didn't realize it was haunted until the previous tenants told us there were several ghosts who were there. And the creepiest thing about this house was, no matter where you were, you always felt like there was somebody completely staring you down. So one night, I was lying in my bed, I was reading a book, all my housemates were downstairs, and it just felt like there was somebody in my doorway staring at me. And I kept looking up from my book, didn't see anybody there, but I couldn't get rid of this creepy, creepy feeling. And then I glanced up, and there was a boy in my doorway. He looked about 17 years old, maybe dressed like the 1940s. I'll never forget what he was wearing, what he looked like. And I screamed so loud, and it was like from the bottom to the top, he just disappeared. He had a very strange habit, this boy, of climbing into bed with the female roommates of the house. He didn't do it to me, but he did it to every other girl who lived in the house. They would wake up in the morning and say, "I had the strangest dream last night. Somebody climbed into bed with me," and then they would describe exactly the boy that I had seen. There was another ghost that was completely different from the young boy who had kind of curious energy, who were all these co-eds suddenly living in his house. This ghost was darker, older, and meaner. And we eventually had to put hooks on all of our doors because you'd be hanging out in your room and your door would just fall right open. So I had a hook on my door so it couldn't open by itself anymore. But one night, the door was rattling as if somebody was trying to open it. And again, I looked up from my bed, and what I saw was, if this is the door, I saw somebody with one eye on this face, the whitest, scariest face of the creepiest old man you ever saw peeking through my door. And I screamed so loud, and I actually ran out of my bed up to the attic stairs where some of my friends were. This same man tortured some other roommates of the house. One came home late one night. The entire house was dark, and she flipped on the lights in the kitchen, and the old man was standing staring at her in the kitchen, and she moved out the next day. I didn't like any of the ghosts in the house. They completely freaked me out. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I moved into a different bedroom. I repainted the walls, and as I did, I said, "This is my space. No one else is allowed in here but me. This is my room." And then I put a sign on the door that said, "Don't F with my reality." And they never bothered me. After we moved out, they tormented the next roommates. The young boy climbed into bed with the girls. The old man peeked in all the doors, and on Christmas Eve, the house burnt down to the ground. And it doesn't exist anymore. Who knows where they went?
Ooh, that's scary. Okay, I'm Sandra, and my first ghost sighting happened when I was 20 years old. It happened in Eureka, California. I was riding my bike and I went to my friend's work. He worked at a used sporting goods store. His name was Jim. And he told me to come by that day because he said, I'll be the only one in the store. The boss won't be there. My coworkers won't be there, and we can hang out. And we were just platonic friends, but that's what you did when you were in college. So I showed up, I parked my bike, and I opened the door to the store. And the first thing I noticed was there was a really loud beeping noise. As you open the door, you'd hear like beep, really obnoxious. It's just so the people in the store could know a customer was coming in. So I open the door, makes a loud noise, and I see my friend Jim coming down the center aisle of the store, and off to the side comes another man. And I was kind of confused because I thought, oh, Jim said he was going to be alone at his store, which is why I was coming by to hang out, but oh well. And the other man is coming up too. It's almost like they're both coming up to me to greet me. But Jim actually cuts the other guy off. The other guy backs up. And Jim gives me a hug. And then all three of us walk to the center of the store. And then Jim and I are having a conversation. The third guy, who has not introduced himself and hasn't said a word, we're all about a triangle, like 6 feet apart from each other. So I'm here, Jim is 6 feet this way, and the other guy is 6 feet this way. And the guy who's not speaking has like brown hair, and I've never seen him before, and he's got his hands behind his back, and he's just kind of watching the conversation. He's part of the conversation, but he hasn't said a word to like contribute to the conversation. I didn't introduce myself, but I was this close to saying, hi, I'm Sandra, what's your name? Anyway, meanwhile, Jim and I are talking back and forth, back and forth. This goes on for 15 minutes where it's just us two talking and this third person not talking, but it didn't feel awkward. It felt like, oh yeah, he's just shy. He's not talking. Finally, Jim started talking about something really personal, and so personal that I was like, ooh, I don't think you want to talk about this in front of a third party. Like, is this, who's this other guy? Is it his boss? So I didn't want Jim to lose his job. And I said, Jim, can we walk like into the back for a second a little bit? And he goes, okay. So Jim and I both walked a little bit further back into the store, just out of earshot of this other guy. And I said, Jim, who is that guy? Are you trying to lose your job? Or are you talking about this personal stuff in front of this total stranger? And I thought you were going to be alone, like, is that your boss? Who's this guy? And he stops and he goes, Sandra, we've been alone this entire time. And I go, no. And I turned my head around. I said, no, there's a guy. He's been there for 15 minutes. And he goes, no, it's just been you and me. And I got chills over my whole body. And I was like, oh my God, no. I said, you're crazy. We went back and forth forever. Finally, he said, like, no, you saw a ghost. So I assumed I opened a door, to the other side. And I was really freaked out after that. And I couldn't sleep alone. I had to sleep on the floor of my roommate's room for months after that. And then 2 years later, the movie The Sixth Sense came out. And sure enough, all the ghosts in that movie were three-dimensional, full color. Because until then, I thought ghosts were see-through and hazy. But nope, this one looked just like a person. He had brown hair down to here. He was wearing like a flannel shirt, jeans. He had a hat on. Brown eyes. He was kind of gaunt. He looked like he would live in Eureka, like he fit in Eureka, California. So anyway, time goes by. I didn't see a ghost for a long time, but I started working at a mental health psych ward. And when we started working there, everyone got assigned to a client I was a counselor. And my first client shows up and he looked exactly like that ghost. And I was like, I've seen that face before. That's the face of my ghost. What the heck? And I got to know my client, and then my client confessed, he was a murderer. And I was like, are clients supposed to be, I didn't bring it up to my bosses because it's supposed to be private. Finally, I said, are they supposed to be like the crimes they've committed, are they supposed to be murderers? And they're like, oh, no, we don't have any people convicted of murder. And I go, no, I don't think he's been convicted. I think he's never been caught. And that was sort of a wake-up call. When they found out he had murdered someone, they transferred him somewhere else. But I wonder if that was a premonition ghost. I don't know what was going on, but it looked just like my client years later. So, yeah.
I'm Jen. The house I lived in from age 9 to age 21, absolutely haunted. The house, to my knowledge, it was built in 1910. I was told one of my step siblings who lived there years before I ever did, before my mom and stepdad got married, she had done research and found out when it was built and the purpose of the building. I was a halfway house for unwed mothers in the early 1900s, when being pregnant and not married was a shameful secret. You were kept hidden away and not talked about. My very first night sleeping in this house after my parents got married, in my bedroom, which was upstairs, this bedroom had 2 crawl spaces in it, doors that came up maybe like 3 or 4 feet. There were 2. There was a single doored crawl space on one side of the room and a double doored crawl space. The double doors did not have a latch, so to keep them shut, we kept something in front of the doors to prevent them from being opened. And I think in this case, it was just like a laundry basket in front of the doors. So first night sleeping in this new house, I'm 9 years old. I get into bed, and sometime late in the evening, wee hours of the morning, I wake up to a noise, and I happen to look over at the double doors, and I saw as if they were trying to be kicked open from the inside, like a forceful boom. And I heard it, and even the laundry basket in front moved forward a bit. And I was in shock. I think I cried out for my mom for a second and just stared at it for a while in disbelief, not knowing what to think, and went back to sleep, probably just talking myself into thinking, oh, that must have been a dream, or it must have been the wind. And I kind of just was able to go back to sleep. The house thereafter, I found out, I told this to my step siblings before about those doors. And they said, oh yeah, those doors never wanted to stay shut. Those doors were always opening. And throughout my life living at that house, always keeping something in front of it to keep them closed, I kept my mirror, a heavy mirror, against it. 3 mirrors broke from the doors being like pushed open, and the mirror would just fall over and shatter in that, over those years that I lived in that house. And they still don't like staying shut, to my knowledge. My parents still live there. I don't like going in that room though. If I'm ever over there to visit, I kind of avoid that part of the house as much as I can. Oh, my bad.
Mm-hmm. All right. My name is Diana, and I'm going to share this latest story that I had the experience of in Sebastopol. I had moved up to Sebastopol in 2016, and I had a friend up there who told me that she was helping her friend remodel his house. He had just purchased this house. He was from England. He was a kind of a goth musician, and he was traveling a lot. The house he'd purchased had been on the market for some time. He got it for a really great deal. And there was a cottage on the property that she was allowed to use as an Airbnb. And she was also remodeling the house at the same time. She had an independent contractor that was working on the house, and she got the furnishings for it and whatnot. But in the Airbnb, was basically, she wanted me to help her when guests would come and to manage this property. Just the small cottage, really. I never really was in the house. It was on the same property, which was up on this hill. You had to walk up this path through the redwoods. It was very dark in there. The house was probably built in the 30s. And a lot of the guests that were in the house would ask me, is anybody in the house right now? It seems like somebody's in the house. And I said, no, nobody's in the house. And then when my friend would also come, she said to me, you know, it feels like somebody is in the house, like they're watching me from the house. And I didn't really think anything of it at all. I never had any feeling of any kind. I never was in the house. But then I went, the musician who owned the house decided that he ultimately wanted to sell and move back to England. So he basically just remodeled the house and fixed it up and then was going to sell it again. But my friend was back in town and wanted me to see how she fixed it up. And so she told me to go into the house. I was just wandering around looking all the different rooms. There was one room that was upstairs that didn't have a window except for this one window on the one side of this pretty large room. And so he wanted to have another window. And this particular window that was put in looked right down over the cottage. And so I went over to the window and I looked out the window, and it was like I got vertigo out of nowhere. I felt kind of like faint and lost my balance, and then it felt like a magnetic push came from behind me, and I felt the hairs in the back of my neck go up, like it was like the temperature dropped or something, and I felt like this push, and I kind of felt myself like I had to take a step forward to catch myself from falling. And so that was pretty creepy. And then I went back downstairs. My friend was downstairs, and I said, this just happened to me. And I was up looking out the window, and yeah, that was the weirdest thing. And she said, oh, you know, I actually forgot to tell you, but the contractor that's been working on the house, he found a goat skull on one of the corners of the foundation. He didn't think anything of it. And then when he was working on the other parts of the foundation, sure enough, there was a goat skull in every single corner of that house. So it definitely had some dark kind of energy to it. And the guy that purchased the house, I looked in his closet too. This is a side note, but he had his clothes. Every single item of his clothing was black, you know. And so maybe he just didn't feel anything because he was resonant with that. Yeah, the palpability of that experience that I had was just, I've never had that kind of sensory push like that before. It was, and nobody was in there with me, so that's my story.
So speaking of haunted houses, I also, like everyone here, I guess you didn't live there, right? You just checked it out? Okay. Like these two, I've lived in a haunted house, and this was after my first ghost sighting that I just told everyone. It was my late 20s, and it was in the Presidio of San Francisco. And it was an old, it's called an officer's mansion. It was a historical house built in 1900. Had 3 stories, 6 bedrooms. So anyway, I moved in, I got a bunch of roommates. There was a roommate in each room. And I had a couple of roommates that were bartenders. So they would be up late at night. They'd come home at 2:30 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And they started telling everyone else, oh, the house is haunted. At 3 in the morning, we hear like a tapping noise, and it seems like it's on our box spring. It's like this. And none of us really took it seriously because we were thinking, oh, it's probably the pipes, or it's probably like a spider or something. And the girls just kept saying, no, last night again, we heard the tapping noise. And then it just started ramping up. Like, my cat, I had a big fluffy black Maine Coon type cat, and they saw my cat get pushed across the room. This also was at 3 in the morning. They also, the one girl and her boyfriend were in her bed, and the bed moved forward and back as if on rollers at one point. And then the freakiest thing that happened to them was they came into the butler's quarters at 3 a.m. and there was a man in a white pajama suit with white hair just standing there in a daze in the butler's quarters. And it wasn't a stranger off the street, because then he disappeared. So all this is happening to the 2 roommates that are bartenders. No one else is having any sightings at all. And we're just like, we're skeptical. So, but none of us are up in the middle of the night. Anyway, my job was such that I had to be up at 5 a.m. to go to work every day. And there was this one day, it was like a special day. I had to get up extra early for work. I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning, and I was dreading it. So I was up at 3:30 in the morning. The 2 bartender girls were already asleep. They'd already had whatever ghost sighting they'd had that night. And I got up, and it's 3:30, and I'm making my breakfast, and I'm in the kitchen, and then I hear the tapping that the girls were talking about. It's like that. I'm like, okay, I'm getting to the bottom of this. And I take everything off the table because it's coming from the table. It sounds like someone's tapping on the table. I'm like, there's going to be a bug. There's going to be a spider. There's going to be something that's making this noise make sense by the laws of physics. I take everything off. The tapping continues. There's nothing. It's like this. And there's nothing on the table now. Nothing could be making the noise. There's no pipes. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's a loud tapping. And I was so scared that I shouted, "Stop it!" Kind of partly because I wanted to wake up all the other roommates so they'd come out and help me. Nobody woke up, but right after I said stop it, the tapping stopped on a dime. And that was more scary than hearing the tapping. So I grabbed my cereal and I ran out it was a 14-passenger van. I had to drive for work, and I just ate my cereal while I was driving out of there. So then I believed them. And after that, I said, okay, you guys, sold. Okay. I'm just never up in the middle of the night. Anyway, fast forward, continuing, they're still having all these experiences every night. Something's happening. Fast forward to maybe a month later, and my friend Stephanie decides she's going to come spend the night. She's coming from out of town. She actually lived up in Eureka, ironically, connecting the other story. And she came into town, and I said, okay, I'm going to put you in the guest room, which was actually an attic, like an unfinished attic with just a mattress thrown on the ground and no carpet, no decorations, just one bare light bulb, mattress, blanket, disgusting, old, dusty, dark wooden attic. She's like, oh, I have to sleep in here. And I'm like, well, it's the guest room. So that's really, she's like, I want to sleep in your room with you. And I'm like, nope, I only have a queen bed and I'm not sharing it. So good night. So I put her in there. I turn out the light, and we're supposed to be going to sleep. And about 5 minutes later, I hear a crashing noise coming from the attic. And I'm like, what now? What's going on in there now? So I get up to investigate, and I go in, and she's like, why are you doing that? I said, why am I doing what? And she's like, well, first you've been tapping right above my head, right on the wood like this. Like this whole time you've been up. I don't know how you're doing it. You must be on the roof or something. And then you made a crashing noise happen right in that corner over there. And I said, oh my gosh, I promise you I'm not doing that. I don't want you to not sleep in here. Like, I'm trying to make this comfortable for you. I don't want to share my bed. I want you to sleep in here. And she's like, I'm not sleeping in here. And I said, okay, yeah, it's a ghost. I had to come clean. I said, yeah, our house is haunted. It's a ghost. And that's when she said, okay, yeah, guess what? Newsflash. I'm not sleeping in here after all. I'm going to sleep in your room with you. And I was like, oh, brother. So before that happened, I happened to look out the window of my room, and I saw my car was missing. And my other roommate had this thing where he would take my car and go get cigarettes for himself, and it wasn't cool. He didn't have a car. And I was like, oh my God, not okay. And I said, Stephanie, come downstairs all the way outside with me so I can see if my car actually is missing. She's like, okay. So now keep in mind it's about 1 a.m. So we both come all the way outside. We're outside. This is in the Presidio. We're on the back porch of our house, my house. And I'm looking for my car, and then something catches our eye. There's a lawn right next to our house. And we both see this at the same time. We see an animal crossing the lawn. It doesn't look like any animal we have ever seen or heard of or read about or anything, okay? There's a word for this. It's called a cryptid, but I'll describe it to you. It was white. It had little gray specks, it had fur, had a long snout, it had a thick tail about like this, and it tapered into a point. its arms and legs dislocated and relocated with every step. So it's like shoulder came out of socket and went back into socket, and the other arm, and it had a humpback. So at first she's like, that's a raccoon, because raccoons sometimes walk with a humpback. There was no way that was a raccoon. And I was like, no, that's a diseased coyote. Nope. Had a long snout, kind of like an aardvark. And she's like, I think it's a dog. And I'm like, that's not a dog. And then I'm like, maybe it's a deer. We couldn't pick the animal. We went through every animal, and it never even saw us. It had beady little eyes on the sides of its head, little black eyes. It never even saw us, and it walked so slow. We had so much time to look at it. And it was almost like, it was like a foggy kind of glowy night. So it was almost like glowing. It was solid in 3D, but it walked across the whole lawn so slowly, dislocating each arm out of each socket all the way. And then it disappeared into the woods on the other side of like where the houses were. It's in the Presidio, so the whole thing is woods. I wish we'd had, this was before cell phone cameras. I wish we'd taken a picture of it. But so now I learned there's a name for an animal that doesn't fit any animal, and it's called a cryptid. But I described this animal to everyone. I tried to look it up online. I can find nothing. And then a couple years later, my mom, who lives in a totally different place, she lives in Southern California, she's like, Sandra, I think I saw your animal. And I said, oh my gosh, describe it. And she described it. It was exactly like mine, except it was brown. I'm like, well, mine was white. She's like, well, mine was brown. She said what it did was it walked up this hill. Her house is like this. It walked up this hill. But then it turned around and looked at her. And I was like, oh my God, that's way scarier than what I saw. But to this day, I still don't know what that was. And it was right next to my haunted house. And we eventually switched to another house. But the roommates in that house always had drama. There was never a drama-free week in that house. To this day, I think that it was possessed, and possibly that's why. Because then we all switched to another house in the Presidio, just because we were on the waiting list for an even bigger house, even cooler, bigger house. And that house never had drama, and also never had, any ghosts in that house. So,
wow. A lot more happened at my house.
But we will hold on to that story, Jen, and we will be back after a short break. You're listening to Ghost Stories on Megalomedia Melange. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Megalomedia Melange in the heart of Inverness. Where exactly are these wonderful personal paranormal stories being told? Well, I can now reveal the hidden location. And also I'd like to let you know that Horizon Cable is completely underwriting the technological amazement for all of us tonight with their high-speed internet. Horizon Cable, the longest-serving cable television company in Marin County. Its home office in beautiful Point Reyes Station. Thank you so much to the underwriting support of Horizon Cable. 5 Cameron Street, Inverness, California, by Courtney Lynn. Lots 5 and 6, Block 7, were sold in late 1919 by Sarah L. Jones to George Ernest Gibson. Gibson was then an assistant professor of the chemistry at the University of California, Berkeley. He had been born in Scotland and educated at the University of Edinburgh and the University of Breslau in Germany, where he received his PhD in 1911. During his time in Germany, he met Edith Kriebel. They were married in 1913. Mary Cardwell's notes at the Jack Mason Museum of West Marin History link the Gibson family to two Inverness structures. The first was the 1906 building at 155 Douglas Way. That building was later destroyed. The second was the Jones Cottage at 5 Cameron Street. It appears that Lot 6, Block 7 is where the 5 Cameron Street house is situated today. Gibson was part of a group of high-powered scholars recruited to Berkeley's chemistry department by its chair, Gilbert Newton Lewis. Gibson began as an instructor in 1914, became assistant professor in 1918, associate professor in 1921, and professor in 1927. His research focused on thermodynamics and physical dynamics. He translated and wrote leading texts on the thermodynamics. He was described as modest concerning his own accomplishments, but especially proud that 2 of his students whose graduate work he supervised would later receive Nobel Prizes in chemistry. George and Edith Gibson formed part of the group of UC Berkeley faculty who began coming to Inverness in the early 1920s. The others included the families of Professors Gilbert Newton Lewis, Ivan Linforth, Edward Tolman, and Rudolph Cheville. Professor Lewis's family lived for a time with the Gibsons, while the Lewises waited for their own Inverness cabin on Balmoral Way to become available. We'll continue a little bit later about 5 Cameron, but we would like to go back right now, as soon as we could, to some stories. Again with Jen, continuing where we left off.
So my stepsister that had done research about this house, she'd also found out that 2 women died in the house, both from falling down the stairs and breaking their necks at the bottom of the stairs. And really, a lot of everything that I had seen and experienced was upstairs, the upstairs part of the house. The stairway going up the stairs, it was walled in. There was a wall on each side and a narrow stairway leading up. And once you reached the 2nd floor, it came onto a landing that was kind of like a lounge area. We had a databed, a TV. It was kind of a hangout area. And there was a room on the right and a room on the left. My room was on the right at the top of the stairs. And at the bottom of the stairs in this house, that's where we kept the house phone for the whole house. A landline. We kept our landline phone at the bottom of the stairs where on 2 separate occasions, 2 women died after falling down the stairs, breaking their necks. And the phone at the bottom of the stairs, frequently at night, the speaker phone would just turn on randomly. And I would hear the dial tone just echo up the stairs. And sometimes I would be the only one awake. So I'd have to go downstairs and turn off the speakerphone and go back upstairs just for it to go off again a couple minutes later, sometimes 2 or 3 times a night, the speakerphone just going off. And over time, it just became annoying. I really came to a point it was no longer scary. I just got really irritated. Like, okay, I'm trying to sleep. Can you stop? The energy definitely shifts as you're going up those stairs. Once you get to the top, you feel the whole vibration just plummet. It's a very, very, very different energy upstairs. And I'd heard a story from one of my stepbrothers. He had some friends sleeping over, and they would use like the landing area, the chill, lounge, daybed. That's where friends would sleep when they would stay the night. And I guess he had a friend sleep over. And the next morning at breakfast, his friend said to my brother, you're such a weirdo. Why were you watching me sleep last night? And my brother's like, I wasn't watching you sleep. And he said his friend's face just turned white. And he said, don't tell me that. Stop messing around. Don't tell me that wasn't you. Why are you lying? Why are you telling me that? And safe to say, his friend never spent the night again. After that, I don't blame him. The room across from mine that both of my sisters, my stepsister and both my sisters had at different points. They'd all had that room at one point. All of them experienced the bed shaking pretty regularly. My stepsister said, it happened so much. One time she woke up because there was an earthquake, an actual earthquake, but it took her a good 30 seconds sitting on the bed being like, okay, is this an earthquake or is this just the bed shaking again? Like it was hard for her to determine which one was happening at that time. And so I have one more, and this happened, I didn't know what was happening until years after the fact that something paranormal had gone on. I was probably 17. And one morning, early morning, my older sister, her room was across from mine. We both had our rooms upstairs. And she comes into my room early morning. It's a weekend. I'm still asleep. She wakes me up and she knocks on my door. She walks in and she looks around the room and she looks confused. And she says, where's Sonny? This was my boyfriend at the time. His name was Sonny. And she's like, where is he? And I said, he's not here. He wasn't here. And she just looked at me a little confused and left. Didn't say anything after that. Years later, she rings up to me. Remember when I woke you up that morning and I was confused that you said he wasn't over? I'm like, yeah, I remember. She's like, well, I asked that because I got up 2 or 3 in the morning. I had to use the bathroom. I walk out of my room. I'm walking by your room and I heard a male voice talking in your room. Not only that, I heard you talking back to it. And I'm really glad she didn't tell me that in the moment when she woke me up the next morning, because I still had to live there after that. I was still a child. But yeah, looking back on that, there's no explanation. And going upstairs is not something I do frequently when I go back to my parents' house. It's just still very, very tangible feeling going upstairs. And that's all I got.
God, yeah. Did you want to tell me about?
Yeah. Do you have another?
This is the story of the time that my younger brother insisted we go to a haunted insane asylum cemetery. My brother and I were on our way to Bar Harbor, Maine, and we were driving from New York. And he loved paranormal places, so he said, in Danvers, Massachusetts, there's this amazing abandoned insane asylum, and we should go because they say that the cemetery is haunted. And it was, I think it was called the Danvers Asylum. So we pulled off the highway. We got to the incredible building that used to be this asylum, and they had turned it into luxury condos. And we had to figure out where was the path to the cemetery. And the thing with the cemetery is it's full of graves of the people who died while they were inmates of the asylum. And I wasn't too keen on walking through it, but he seemed so excited. So I was like, okay, let's go. Let's do it. So we walk down, we find the path, we walk down the path, and there's these 2 huge rocks that is the entranceway to this cemetery. And as soon, he walked through first and he's like, it's so cool. There's just numbers on the graves. There's not even people's names. These are all the people who died here. It's just numbers. And he was kind of skipping around like he was completely happy, like it was a playground. And I kind of stood at the rocks like, this looks really creepy. But then I walked past the rocks, and immediately when I entered the actual cemetery proper, it felt like someone or something completely put their arms around me. Like, I'm only 5'2", so it felt like somebody huge was on top of me, over me, completely wrapped around me. And I felt such pressure on my lungs. I could barely breathe. It was so scary. And I said, I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to stay. And he said, come on, it's really cool. Let's go look at everything. And because this was huge, the amount of graves with just numbers, no names. There were so many of them. And I tried to walk around, but I couldn't feel like I could draw a breath. And finally I said, you know what? I can't stay. I feel so claustrophobic. I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like there's so much pressure on my skin. And he said, can I hold your cell phone? I'd like to take some pictures. And I said, absolutely. And I kind of tossed my phone to him, and I turned around. And as soon as I walked back past the stones, the feeling completely dissipated and went away. So I went up to the car, and I sat in the car and waited. And about 5 minutes went by, and he came up and he said, your phone is dead. He said, it's out of battery. And I said, that's impossible, because we've been driving for 5 hours and it's been plugged in for 5 hours and it had a completely full battery. And he said, well, it drained in the time I was down there. And then he kind of looked at me and he said, sometimes they do that. They can drain your battery. About a year later, I was having a psychic reading, and the psychic said to me, where were you in the creepy cemetery when the ghost hugged you? And I said, excuse me, what? And she said, where were you? Where was the creepy cemetery? And I said, oh, my brother took me to an abandoned insane asylum haunted cemetery. And she said, yes, there was a giant spirit that came up behind you, wrapped his arms around your body, put his face in your hair, and said, no one ever comes to visit me, and I just want to smell her hair. And then when you couldn't take it and you left, he stood back, he watched you go outside the gates, and very sadly he said, I'm not allowed to go out there, and just watched you walk away. And I will never, ever go back to the Danvers haunted insane asylum cemetery.
Sounds like a pretty good psychic.
Yeah, she was a good psychic.
It's a real thing.
So speaking of going out of town for ghostly adventures, I went to the Myrtles plantation in Louisiana to spend the night. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it's probably one of the most haunted bed and breakfasts in America. It's called the Myrtles Plantation, and it's about 3 hours from New Orleans. It's gorgeous. It's on like lots of land. Anyway, I went there with my friend Megan because we're both really into ghosts, and we were like, "Ooh, we're going to spend the night. We're hoping we'll see something." So we got to our room. They gave us this room. It was called the Fannie Williams room. We found out later that the Fannie Williams room is the single most haunted room in this bed and breakfast, which is also probably the most haunted bed and breakfast in America. So that's where we were sleeping that night. And the bed was smaller than a queen. It was barely as big as a full because it was an antique bed from the old days, and they were always smaller. And she and I had to share this bed, which I wasn't looking forward to that. And there was, two sides of the room. One side was by the door to get out and by the lamp that you can turn on. And the other side of the bed was by a creepy doll on a fireplace mantle and a door that was locked on both sides that led you into the other wing of this giant mansion plantation thing. So it was like a door to the unknown that you can't go out anyway. on the scarier. So the scary side of the bed had the doll and the door that you could go through, and the safe side of the bed had the lamp and the door you could run out on. Of course, she fought me for the safe side, so she ended up on the safe side of the bed. So I begrudgingly had to take the other side. And we got into our bed, and no sooner as I laid down, she instantly started snoring, but I had huge regrets. I was like, why did I do this? This was the worst idea. There's no way I'm going to sleep. I'm so freaking scared. Even though there's a girl sleeping right next to me, I don't feel comforted by that because she's asleep. She's snoring. I'm wide awake with the world's worst insomnia. And I'm next to the doll, and I'm next to the door that you can't go in or out. Turns out we went there during hurricane season, so it was the slow season for Louisiana travel, and they had actually shut off the entire other wing of the building. So that door was locked, and there was not a single guest staying in the rooms on that side. They were only on our side, and there was only 4 rooms on our side, so there was only, I don't even know if all those rooms were taken. I think there was like 1 guest in one of the rooms. So here I am, and I'm just thinking, I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight. I'm so scared, and she's snoring. And the clock is ticking, and I am wide awake. I'm not sleeping a wink. I'm not even tired. But the bed is so small that I don't want to toss and turn because I don't want to wake her up. She goes in and out of snoring. She's not snoring the whole night. And then it gets to be 3 a.m., of course, again. And she's not snoring at this point. And I didn't realize this, but she was having insomnia at 3 a.m. as well. I was having it the whole night, but she just had it at that point. And she was trying not to move because she didn't want to wake me up, but she didn't know I had been awake the whole time and was still awake. So we're both lying in bed awake, not knowing that the other one is awake, trying to be good bedmates and not wake the other one up. We're both lying there. And we both hear the same thing because we're both awake. We found out later, but coming from the door that, as I said, is locked on both sides and leads to the other wing of this building, I hear footsteps coming through that door, even though the door doesn't open, and the footsteps are now in the room with us. And it's a hardwood floor, but it sounds like a foot on a hardwood floor, a barefoot, without the creaking part of the footstep. Because if you have any weight to you, you creak, but it was just the sound of like a foot, skin touching the floor and lifting and touching the floor and lifting with no weight. And I hear that on my side of the bed going along my side. And I said, this is not good. And now I'm paralyzed with fear. Like I am not able to even move. I'm so scared and I'm wide awake. This is not a dream. And I'm hearing those footsteps. And I was like, please, whoever that is, go to my friend Megan. Like get her, don't get me. Get her, don't get me. Like it was survival at that point. It was dog eat dog, each woman for herself vibes. So I hear the footsteps walking all the way down the length of the bed. And then I hear it walking along the foot of the bed like this. I hear it pass by my side. My ears are wide open. I can hear everything really well. Passes by my side. And then I hear the footsteps stop. And then Megan lets out the most blood-curdling scream and flies up in bed. I say, get the lamp, because I know she's next to the light. You know, get the light. She knocks over the light, so she's useless for being next to the light. And I'm like, what happened? We're both screaming. And she's like, oh my God. And she's like, I'll tell you. She's like, let's go to the bathroom. Let's get out of here. And I'm like, okay, the bathroom is down the hall. So we both run out of the room. We run into the bathroom that's down the hall. And we're now in the bathroom. We're breathing hard. And I'm like, okay, what happened? I said, because I heard footsteps. She's like, yeah, I heard footsteps. And I'm like, I thought you were asleep. She's like, I thought you were asleep. I don't want to wake you up. And I'm like, well, I heard footsteps. She's like, I heard footsteps. And here's what happened. The person with the footsteps, which you could see this person because they were a ghost, came to the foot of the bed by her feet, pushed the sheet up, now exposing her foot. So pushed the sheet up her ankle like that. And she thought it was my foot, like playing footsie or something. So she remembered looking down and she saw her foot was exposed. She saw the blanket had been pushed up and she saw my feet were tucked away on my side. It couldn't have been me. And then she felt a cold hand caressing her foot like that. And that's when she screamed. So she tells me this when we're in the bathroom, and we know it's only 3:05 now in the morning, so we still have to go back to that room to try to sleep. And we're like, let's not go back to bed. Because I'm like, I'm not going to fall asleep. I already had the worst insomnia in my life. And she's like, okay, I'll stay up too. I said, good. So we come back to the room. Keep in mind, there's like nobody in this bed and breakfast. It's empty. It wasn't like we walked really far to get to the bathroom. We just walked, it was like 2 doors down. We come back to our room. Our room is filled to the brim with cigarette smoke. And the windows are all closed. It's not like somebody was outside smoking. And we've been told already, like, oh yeah, you can, smell the ghosts with their cigars and their cigarettes and this and that. It's a super haunted place. And we were like, this is really weird and creepy. And we just stayed up for the rest of the night together, which was kind of fun, but also like, I was like, I'm going to look horrible tomorrow because I didn't even sleep for a minute. So the next morning, everyone in the hotel or the bed and breakfast goes down to like the kitchen area where we're all eating together. And we all decide we're going to share our stories, like if anything happened to anyone else. And we told ours, and this other girl told one where she actually had a tripod camera up filming her and her husband in their bed. And she said whenever she's around a ghostly presence, she'll get nauseous. And it shows her on the camera, because they looked at the footage already, shows her get up out of bed and walk to the bathroom and throw up. But right before she does that, you see the camera go, oh, like the ghost moved the camera lens or whatever. And so that was their experience. Meanwhile, so we come back to our room, it's after breakfast, and there's the maid person. It's a guy named Moses. And he's starting to clean our room. We're like, oh, hi. And I said, I got to ask you about this ghost thing because, we had a pretty crazy night last night. And I'm like, you work here. Is this real? Like, do you see ghosts? He's like, I see them all the time. I'm like, oh, do you see the same ones over and over? Do you see new ones? He's like, the same ones over and over. And I'm like, what do they do? And he's like, they talk to you. I said, like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, they mimic your voice. They talk to you in your own voice. Never heard of that before, but now I know there's a thing called ghosts that mimic. Anyway, I said, tell me what some of these ghosts are like. And he said, well, there's this one family where the guy is bent at the waist. Okay, so he's always bent like this. And the woman, you know that for a second, is always holding her baby like this. And her eyes are like this. Like that. And that really freaked us out. And then right then the chandelier flickered. And he goes, you see that? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, they're here. And we were just like, ooh. And then that doll on the mantle, he said that oftentimes that doll will end up in people's suitcases and they'll come home and they'll be like, I didn't pack this doll, what's going on? And they'll mail it back to the Myrtles. So that's the Myrtles plantation if anyone wants to have an experience that's a sleepless night. Go there. Do you have one?
I do have another one. Okay.
It's actually a perfect time to take another short break as we are at the bottom of the hour. And you're listening to a very special Megalomedia Melange with production by 2 other entities. We have this filmed and it is being broadcast on a YouTube channel by Blue Sky Studios with Justin Kuzmanich helming the camera work. And it is produced by Sharon Drake of Musemaker Labs. And because of her, this evening has come together along with Eden Gabray, who has graciously allowed us to come into 5 Cameron in the heart of Inverness to be able to have these ghost stories with the Penumbra Society and these paranormal experiences brought to you. And I just want to let everyone know once again we're listening with Diana Lerwick, Sandra D'Angelo, Jen DePina, and Rebecca Nelson Lubin. I'm Jimmy G, and this is KWMR 90.5 FM in Point Reyes Station, 89.9 in Bolinas, and 92.3 in the San Geronimo Valley. We are listener-supported West Marin Community Radio, streaming live and archiving online at kwmr.org. This has been a lot of fun, and it actually is Halloween. We're going to listen to a little piece by the wonderful Handel, Suite Number 7, the Pascal. Let's check it out. And we're coming back now. A short break, listening to the creepy harpsichord music of George Frederick Handel, handling it, the Pascal, Suite Number 7 in G minor. And we are back with the Penumbra Society in the heart of Inverness, 5 Cameron, which is available for you to buy. If you check out Caldwell Banker, check out on the weekends at 5 Cameron, Inverness, and you too can check out where these stories have been told and possibly buy a very affordable piece of West Marin. I'm going to return it now to the ladies who are sharing their stories. And welcome back. Who's next?
All right. So this story came to me as I was thinking of another share. And this one's not really a scary story. It was more of an intriguing thing that happened. We, my husband and I, years ago before we had kids, had some property up north, and I hadn't been feeling very well, and he was out in the woods cutting trees and doing whatever he was doing, and I was just basically laying down and trying to feel better, and I heard off in the distance, like a very distant kind of thing, like I might have been making it up in my head, this chant, and it went muali muali ale muali muali ale muali muali ale. It kept repeating over and over again, and I'm just thinking, that's interesting, you know. Didn't think anything of it really, but then I went on a hike later with my husband in the woods, and he stopped and he was looking around and was like, "Do you hear that?" And I was like, "Yes, I heard it earlier." And it sounds like this, right? And I said, "It sounds like muali muali ale." And he's like, "That is so weird." And so that was pretty much all that happened. But we went down that evening. There was this exhibit on the Pomo Indians that used to live in that area at the Sea Ranch, and a lot of the placards on the different things that they would do, they would chant doing everything that they did, whether it was like washing their clothes or gathering different kind of grains or anything. They were like one of the most vocal tribes. So I just was very fascinated, like, gosh, I wonder if it means something, you know? And my friend gave me a book on Pomo Indians that it wasn't a written language, it was just passed down orally. And the last fluent speaking Indian died in 1997, but the book had been published before that about the foods. And a lot of them ended in Ali, which was interesting. But then I happened to find the last fluent, the woman who was the last fluent speaker had died in 1997, but I found her daughter. I met, it was at the Fort Ross, they have the Indigenous Peoples Day, and she was there. And so I told her the story, and she thought it meant passing through. And I just thought that was really interesting because that's what we're all doing, But yeah, so that was my story. It was definitely not spooky. I kind of wanted to hear something. We had the property for 20 years. I never heard anything again. That was the only time. But yeah, so that's all I got.
Well, I got one that's really scary now after that.
Okay.
Not scary. It was scary actually a little bit. So.
Wasn't scary to us.
Okay. So this actually happened to my friend Tara, and I wouldn't normally tell a story for someone else, but she couldn't make it tonight, and I think it's scarier than any story I have, so I think it's worth telling. So she lived in an apartment with her boyfriend at the time, and he worked graveyard shift. So she would be home alone every night, and then when he came home, he'd sleep all day. So she'd be home alone, and she would go to bed with the TV on because she was so freaked out just because she was home alone. And the TV would turn off in the middle of the night. So she would always have the TV on and try to fall asleep to the TV on, and then she would wake up and the TV would be off. Or she'd be watching the TV and it would just turn off. So she's like, you know what, then I won't have the TV on because that's so freaky. So then she would go to bed and she would have no TV on. And in the middle of the night, the TV would turn on. So it would do the reverse of what she wanted. Then she started noticing a smoky smell coming not from in her room, but from outside her room. And she could hear the sounds. She's like, is that like a fireplace? Like a crackling thing? And she would smell that. And she's like, is the apartment on fire? So she would go out, get out of her room and open the door, and there'd be nothing out there. Like no fire, no smoke, nothing. She's like, it's so weird. And then she goes back in her room and she smells it again and hears the crackling noise. And this went on, and she would complain about it to her boyfriend, and he's like, I don't know what to do because I work graveyard, she's like, I think the house is haunted, and she would always refer to her boyfriend as babe, and he would call her babe, and she'd always go, hey babe, and he'd always be like, hey babe. That's how they talk to each other. So there was one night where she slept alone again, and she heard someone coming in the house, in the apartment, coming from downstairs. And she's like, hey, babe, because she assumed it was her boyfriend. And right after she said that, suddenly there was a face in her face, and it went, hey, babe. So that's when she was like, oh my God, it wasn't her boyfriend. He wasn't home. It was, like I said, a mimicking ghost from the last story, like the ghost that will mimic your voice. Or it was making fun of how she kept calling him babe. And they moved out the next day. She was like, that's, the TV turning on and off, I can handle. The smoke smell, I can handle. But having something like a disembodied face in my face, making fun of me when you're not even there. And they were just done. So, yeah. I don't know if we want to play some EVPs now. If anyone doesn't know what an EVP is, it stands for electronic voice phenomenon. And what that means is when people go to haunted places and they want to pick up on ghosts talking or trying to communicate with you, they play a recorder. And you might not hear the ghost with your ears because we don't have that ability, but the recorder will pick up the ghost talking. So then you do a playback and you go, oh my gosh, there's a voice on there that what never happened. Like there's no person in this room that fits that voice. So it's called an EVP, and it's basically a recording of a ghost that you didn't hear when you were there in person, but you hear it on the device. And there's different levels of EVPs. There's A grade, B grade, C grade, D grade. I don't really like the ones that are down C and D grade, like the real crackly ones. I like the ones that sound like a real person talking, like let's hear a real EVP. So I've collected EVPs over the years, and I brought 3 that are all A pluses. And there's the last one we're going to play is actually an A++. So the first one, I'll explain where it was. It's in this haunted house in Oakland called the Cohen Bray House, I think. And it was a meetup, and I signed up for it. It was a ghost hunting meetup where all these strangers show up at this Victorian house that's supposedly haunted. It was in Oakland, and they have all their equipment, and I don't think I really added much, but long story short, this EVP was taken from the top floor tower room, and I promise you there was no child in the room. It was all adults, and we were so high up and all the windows were closed. Even if there was a child outside making this noise, there's no way, first of all, there were no children outside. It was actually like a neighborhood where nobody was even walking around. But we were like 4 stories up. I mean, we were the tower level. And we're going to play this EVP for you, and you'll hear the humans talking. Kind of, I don't remember what they're saying, but it's louder than the ghost, but you'll hear them talking over the ghost. And the ghost is a little kid that says something like, what should I tell her? Like that. So we can play that one right now. Here we go.
After you say what was it?
Did you guys hear how it said, what should I tell her? We can play it a second time.
Do it again.
After you say what was it?
That little kid whining. So that's like an A, not an A+, but an A, because there were humans talking over the ghost. But still, I was in that room with those people, and there was no child. There was no one with a baby voice. And that was after the people in my group said, I don't remember what they asked, honestly. I think they said, like, has this place changed over the years? I think it was Oakland Fruitvale, so it had. It used to be like really nice, and then it was run down after that. But so that's the first one we're gonna play. The second one is at a giant mansion in Mill Valley, California, that I can't say the name of it because I'm pretty sure the people that are in charge of this place don't want the whole world to know that it's extremely haunted. So I'm gonna not say the name of it, but it's a giant mansion. Weddings are held there. It's in the woods. I mean, we're talking enormous. When I say mansion, I mean you can sleep 40 people there. Anyway, my friend, back before they scrubbed the internet so nobody would know it's haunted, my friend was doing ghost recordings there. She was trying to collect EVPs. And she gave me one of her EVPs from there. I actually got married in this venue myself, but again, not going to say what it is. So this next EVP, the human is talking a lot louder than the ghost. So I will say, I forgot what she says. It's a woman talking, and it's so loud. Maybe get your fingers ready to plug your ears. But the ghost is a man, and it's a lot softer, but it's not even a whisper. He's talking in a normal voice. And after we hear it, I'll say what he said in case anyone missed it. So this is from the Mill Valley Mansion.
Can you touch someone in this room so that they can feel it? Shut your mouth.
Okay, so what she said is, the human said, can you touch anything and anyone in this room so they can feel it? And the ghost said, go shut your mouth. So he's going to play it again.
Can you touch someone in this room so that they can feel it? Shut your mouth.
And you guys might be thinking, oh, come on, that's a person. Nope. There was only women in that room. They were the only people in the whole place. So the third EVP I saved best for last. is the best I've ever heard in my life. It's an A+. It comes from my very own kitchen. In fact, our kitchen. What happened was my friend Tara from one of the last story I told, she got so into ghosts after her experience that she joined a ghost hunting group. And she always thought that my house was haunted. And I was like, don't tell me that. I don't want it to be. But yeah, so I don't want it to be. But anyway, so she got the ghost hunting group to come to my house and get their recorders and their devices out. And we were all in the kitchen. I was there for all this. We were all in the kitchen. It was a psychic lady and me, and my friend Stacy was in there too, and in the kitchen at the time. And the psychic lady feels a weird energy, and she goes, I gotta get away from that. And then the ghost kind of mocks her and says something right after she says that. And when we play it, I'll say again who said what, because the ghost is so loud, you might think it's a real person, but it 100% wasn't. It was a ghost. So here we go. This is my
Okay, I need to get away from that. Yeah, away.
So the human said, I need to get away from that. And then the ghost goes, get away. I'm a good mimicker, so that wasn't me, guys. I've just heard it so many times I can imitate the ghost. That ghost did not sound male or female, and that was in our kitchen, and I was there in person. I did not hear that in person. There was no weirdo in the kitchen sounding like neither male nor female going, get away. Okay, that was a ghost. Do you want to play it again?
Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. Okay, I need to get away from that. Yeah, away.
Yeah. So the psychic was feeling some pretty bad energy, and she's like, I need to get away from that. And it was like the ghost was like almost making fun of her, and it's like, fine, get away. Maybe. Who knows? But that was in our kitchen. Don't worry, your rooms had nothing in them, because we did have cameras in there, I promise. However, there was a camera on a tripod set up in my room. And when the night was over, the ghost hunter said to me, oh, Sandra, we got the best footage in your room. And I said, nope. To this day, I've not seen it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to know what it is. And I said, no, you know what? Keep it to yourselves. I'm glad you got good footage. But they didn't get footage in your room or your room, so no. You're safe. And then they got that audio recording from the kitchen. And that's, I guess, our house. So, yep. I have more stories, but...
I have something that I could tell that happened 2 years ago today.
Oh, in the house?
Mm-hmm. The light in my room.
Oh, yeah, you can tell.
Yes, just to let you know, we have enough time for just about 5 or 6 more minutes before we're done with the evening.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to tell one more story, go ahead.
2 years ago, on November 1st, the Day of the Dead, one of my best friends passed away. And I was very sad, had been one of my favorite people for over 30 years of friendship. And I went to bed very, very sad. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and there is a lamp that is a solar lamp that hangs very, very up high in my ceiling. And the only way I can turn on this lamp is to pull over a chair, stand on the chair, reach up as high as I can, take the lamp down, and click the light in front in the inside of it, because it has a string of blue Christmas lights, and then you put it back up. But I woke up the night my friend died, in the middle of the night, and the light was on. And I looked at it and I said, hello. I'm so sorry what happened to you. I miss you. I love you. And you can turn the light off if you want to. The next morning, the light was still on, and I went and got Sandra, and I said, come look in my room. This light turned on in the middle of the night, and I think it's my friend who passed away yesterday. And then I went to take it down to turn the light back off. And the switch on the Christmas lights was broken, so I couldn't turn it back off. So I thought to myself, well, let's see how long it takes for the lights to burn out. These little string of Christmas lights had one single A battery. And every night for 40 days and 40 nights when I came home, the lights were still burning. It got to the point where I'd come home and I'd say hello to the lights. And I would say, I see you're still burning my lights. That is wonderful. It's good to see you. I had a good day. Good night. And I'd wake up and the lights would still be going. On the 40th day, the lights went out. About 2 days later, I was doing some shopping in downtown Mill Valley, and I ran into a mutual friend of ours, my friend who had died, one of his other very good friends. And I told her the story of the night he died, the lights went on, and she said, how long did they stay on? And I said, they stayed on for 40 days. And she put her hand over mine and she said, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they say it takes 40 days for the soul to leave the earth. And that's why your light stayed on for 40 days. After the lights went out, I tried to put another battery in the string of lights, and they would never turn on again, even with a fresh battery. But I did save them.
Nice. All right. Well, I guess we're all going to be scared sleeping tonight, huh?
That was sort of a sweet story, though, too. Yeah.
2 years ago tomorrow.
Would you say that was the final story from the Penumbra
I have a lot
Society?
more, but we might want to just end there because it could go on all night.
We would like to thank Eden and Justin, who've made this evening possible here at 5 Cameron in the heart of Inverness. And you should check this place out if you can come by on the weekends, and Eden and Justin may be here showing the house, and they're happy to show you the house, and they might even let you take it home with you. Also, special thanks to everyone here. I just want to say thank you to Rebecca Nelson-Lubin, Sandra DeAngelo, Jen DePina, and Diana Lerwick, and Sharon Drake for producing this special evening of ghost stories here that we are broadcasting both on KWMR 90.5 FM, and we are trying our hand at producing it as a video extravaganza of sorts on the interwebs and YouTube.